Okay guys, so welcome back to your second tutorial. Today we're going to be going over part of the sketch. So the very first thing we're going to do is open up a new folder or file. Go to part, hit OK. And I'm just going to bring you through each one of these sketches. Now, when you do this, I would suggest the best way to really learn this is just do it yourself. Okay? And we're also going to be learning this through actually creating geometry, 3D geometry, but I'm just going to give you the very, very basic how to draw a box or a line or circles. Okay? So, we're going to go to line, and as soon as you select line, it's asking you which 2D plane should you draw on, because when you pick a line, you are picking a 2D line. You have to pick a 2D plane to draw a 2D line. So when you pick front plane, you're going to be drawing on the front plane. That's usually where I start out. So we're going to pick front plane. And if you notice, this little red two arrows is going to be your origin point. So that's X, Y, or Z, or whichever way you want to look at it. But as you highlight over it, you want to click your origin, because usually you start your sketch out at your origin. And there's going to be reasons that you want to do that for later on. Right now, just get in the habit of selecting your origin when you first create geometry. So we're going to pick that, and if you see this little yellow line or little yellow icon pop up, that's just saying that my line is going to be perfectly straight 180 or 0 degrees on my plane, and once you see that disappear, it's actually at an angle. So we're going to click it, and there's going to be a lot of information put into these little green icons, and all that is relationships. So you'll see a little dash right there. That's just a horizontal relationship. That is a coincidental relationship, and there are different meanings behind this. We'll get into those in future tutorials, but for now we're just showing you guys how to create the geometry. So if you hit Control 1, that is going to basically pan you in front of the front plane. So from there we're going to draw a circle. Alright, so I just selected circle. We're going to pick origin. If you click and drag out, you can create a circle and you can click. Now, to dimension this circle, you're going to use something called Smart Dimension. And Smart Dimension is fairly simple. You can, for this line for instance, you can click point to point, or you can, let me hit escape. You can click the line itself. Let me hit escape and then go out of it and go back into it. If you click the line itself, and let's say we want it to be 15 millimeters long, you can click the diameter, and we can say that is 19 millimeters diameter. Alright, so these are the different ways that you dimension your lines and circles and boxes, is by using Smart Dimension. Alright, so I'm going to delete these. And we're going to go into spline. Now, splines are a little bit more complicated. You probably won't be using those most of the time. I might even have a separate video about splines, because you actually have equation driven curves and fit splines. Now, before I jump too far ahead, we're going to go back and look at center line and parameter circle. Like I said, the easiest way to learn this stuff is by doing it, but center lines is mainly going to be used for construction lines, meaning that you're not going to actually use this to extrude or extrude cut into 3D geometry. You're just going to be using it as a reference line. So that's what center line is, and all it is a line, except it's actually dashed. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that. Alright, and you see the little yellow icon is yellow, and if I go off of it, it'll be angled, so I want it to be yellow. So I'm just gonna, it kind of snaps into place if you actually are using Solidworks. So I'm gonna hit escape. Now, another cool feature about drawing lines is that when you click and let go, when you're drawing lines, it just keeps drawing lines. But if you click and hold and then you let go, it stops drawing lines. So if you click your mouse and hold down and let go, it finishes drawing. But if you click, let go, move, click, let go, move, it actually just keeps going. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm going to delete everything. If you go to parameter circle, you can actually see the way that it's drawing the circle with 3 points. So if you have 3 midpoints that you want to click to create your circle at a tangent, you can use that. Splines, I'm just going to have a separate video for splines. Right here is a corner rectangle. You have all these different ways to create rectangles and parallelograms. So you can create it from the center out, or you can create it from the corner out. So we're just going to use the corner, and you can just play with those. Those aren't really that complicated. And you can use Smart Dimension to dimension those out. So we're going to go ahead and Smart Dimension a box just so you guys know how to do it. So I click my origin, and I'm going to drag it out. I'm going to go to Smart Dimension, click my line, come up. Let's say that's 20 millimeters long. So I just hit 20, enter. And then I'm going to click it from line to line this time. So I'm going to click that line, then this line, and click. Now before I hit the check mark, I just kind of want to go through these. That just means that you agree. This means that you do not agree. So you want to restore it to the original value. That is rebuild and regenerate with the model with the current value. This is if I want to reverse it to go negative or positive. Alright, this is reset, spin, incremental value. Now these little incremental values you can actually click and drag, and you can set whether or not you want them to increment up 1 millimeter at a time, 10 millimeter at a time. And you can do all that through the different options that you set in Solidworks. We'll show you guys also how to do that later. And right now I'm just going to make this 10 millimeters. Alright. So from that box we can actually extrude it, but we'll do that later. Alright. So that covers your boxes. Just hit escape, or you can go up here and hit Smart Dimension to get out of that. I'm just going to click and hit delete. Alright, the next is going to be the different ways to create arcs. You can click tangents, you can click 3-point arcs or center point arcs. Like I said, it's just easiest if you actually just do this yourself, play around at home. But it's pretty self-explanatory, pretty easy. And as we go through the projects, we'll probably be using each one of these, so you'll be able to see them in example. But I didn't want to have a solid part in here trying to show you guys how to do it because we haven't gotten to that point yet. So you can draw ellipses. I mean, there's nothing you can't really do. And the cool thing that they've added, which has been in the last few years, is a slot. So you can do curved slots, you can do 3-point arc slots, center point arc slots, and you just have to have points to click to really create these. So if you have a point, and another point, you can create pretty cool looking slots. But if you have a curved counterbore, then this works pretty good. Okay, you can also sketch fillets and chamfers at intersection points of lines. So if you have 2 lines, let's click here, click, and click, hit escape. Now there are hotkeys for all these, and you can also customize your hotkeys, but like I said, we'll show you guys that later. And let's say we want a 3 millimeter radius. So whenever you actually get into SolidWorks and creating chamfers, fillets, extruding, whenever you click this, on your feature tree turns into an option menu, and all it's going to do is ask you a series of questions based on what you want on your part. So the trick is in SolidWorks is to understand what it's asking you. If you can understand what it's asking you, you can get the part that you want. But if you have no idea what it's asking you, then you're out of luck. So what we're going to be doing is showing you whenever you click on these specific buttons, especially when you get into features, is we're going to be telling you what it's asking for. And then from there you can plug in the numbers that you want to plug in. So 3 millimeters, we'll click the intersection point, or you can click line and line and it'll do it, but it's just easier to click the intersection point. And hit OK. And as you can see, it creates a radius. Now, like I said, the very cool thing about the feature tree is, let's say I get done sketching and I hit rebuild. And what rebuild's going to do is it's going to take me out of sketch mode. So when I'm in sketch mode, I'm actually ready to sketch on a specific plane. If I'm out of sketch mode, which this button will look like it's pressed when I'm in sketch mode, but if it looks like it is now, then I'm out of sketch mode and I'm not really doing anything. But when I am in sketch mode, that button's pressed, my buttons and my lines are blue and black, and in order for us to actually edit these gray lines, then we're going to have to either click the line and go edit sketch, or you can go over here in your feature tree, which is the history of your part that you're creating, click it, left click it, and then go to edit sketch. Alright, and then you can double click whatever you've dimensioned out and change it and hit the check mark button. Now, another important thing that you are going to be seeing in front of you is Solidworks uses colors a lot of the times, and the blue lines in front of you that you see are called underdefined lines. The black ones are defined, meaning that they cannot be adjusted or moved, but the blue ones you can actually click and move around. The black ones are stable and they cannot be moved. Alright, so the blue points you can actually click and drag. The black ones are underdefined. So before you extrude cut, you need to make sure that this very bottom right, this underdefined, needs to say fully defined. So if I go to smart dimension and I click this point and this line, and then I say okay there, notice how this entire line becomes black and now it cannot move. So if I click and drag, the only way it can go, let's see, is up. So now it still says underdefined because I'm able to click and drag that out. So now what we have to do is go in here and tie that in, and now it says fully defined. So before you move on to extrude cutting or anything like that, make sure that your sketch says fully defined, at least until you know what you're doing, because most of the time I've had people learn SolidWorks and they'll forget that step, and then they'll forget to dimension one thing out, and we'll have machinists program and make an entire part, and all they had to do was smart dimension one thing and they forgot to do it. So that's just kind of a step that'll help you not mess up. Now, another cool little thing that'll help you out is if you want to go from metric to inches, you go down here to the bottom right of your screen and you can actually change from metric to inches. So right now I'm in metric, so I'm going to leave it like that. Alright, you can create text. So if you want to go here and say point and hit check, you can click and drag this anywhere you want, and then you can use that to extrude cut as well. But we're going to go to point, and points come in handy with different things. We're going to be showing you guys examples later on whenever we actually create parts, but just know that in order to create a point, you just go to point. Now, when it comes to 2D geometry, there are things called relations, which we're going to have a video on. But if you take a point or a line and you hover over another line, you'll see a midpoint pop up. It'll be a little yellow box. So if you just hover over that, you can actually click and make a point and on the midpoint. So some pretty cool stuff. Okay? Other than that, that is how you actually create geometry. From here, we're going to move on to how to trim it, convert it, which that actually deals with 3D geometry. So I'll show you guys a quick example of that, and show you guys how to offset it, move it, copy it, mirror it, and then add relations, explain relations, which are very, very important. And then from there, we'll move on to actually extruding and creating 3D geometry. All right. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll move on to the next step.